We can get started. A few things I wrote down, and then we'll dive in. So I went on my drive home. I've been in Austin all week. On my drive home, I went and listened to the last crew chief meeting. I would recommend all of you to go do it, to go back, because even though it's a small group and it's great dialogue, I actually learned some things just going back and listening. So, like Brian likes to say, a lot of meat to chew on for sure. There's a lot of good information. So I went back to listen to that, just so we didn't go over certain things that we had talked about, or maybe that we some things that we didn't have clarification we may want to dive back into. So I do recommend y'all going back and checking it out. Before we do get in though, we've always keep talking about culture change and the way that things are happening in our association and for everyone else, even with Farron and Corpus. And so I did hear a lot of negative things about who's on the clips and those type things. So I feel us as crew chiefs that I wanted to address it. I don't mind opening it up real quick, just for a few minutes, to make sure we're consistently giving responses to people that are upset about it. I hope that everybody's on the same page when we talk about it doesn't matter who's on the clips, but it's how we can grow as officials. And I think we need to try to get away from worrying about who is on the game film as opposed to what is the teaching point. So I'm going to open that up for a few minutes if anybody else has heard it or has any things they want to add to it. Otherwise, I'm going to go for a few quotes that I listened to a podcast today, and then we'll jump into the agenda. Okay, I didn't think so. I think we're all on the same page. So let's just, again, crew chiefs, be consistent on how we're relaying information to our association about. It's more about the content, not who's on it. I did want to add these things. I thought they were interesting. Mark Davis, NBA referee, I listened to two things he did on the podcast. He said an elite official just does the basics better than everyone else. Kind of, that really hit home, because we've always talked about getting back to the basics, getting back to fundamentals of refereeing. And that's what it is. I don't like you like to use the word elite, especially me running a basketball gym, because all these parents get caught up in the elite basketball player. But having crew chiefs or being the top in your association, that's what it basically comes down to. Again, he says an elite official just does the basics better than everybody else. I agree with that 100%. Just something to think about. And then he also talked about if there's any issues in the game, possibly could be a missed call, an issue with a coach, a player, anything. When we have those situations, he got 5 things go into his mind, and I think these are something that we can all take into our game. Is 1, watch the defense. 2, stay in your PCA. 3, call the obvious. 4, trust your partners. 5, trust the system. And that's what he does every time. He talked about every time it's something he has a call he doesn't like, or his partner had a call he didn't like, or they've got issues going in the game, he immediately goes to his checklist and he goes over those 5 things. And I can send them to you if I went too fast, but I'll go over it one more time. Watch the defense, stay in your primary, call the obvious, trust your partners, trust your system. Simple stuff. And this is top NBA finals referee. That's what I like listening to the NBA referees is, yeah, there's some high level teaching, but it all comes back to the basics, back to the fundamentals, which we can relate to as high school officials. All right, so tonight's agenda, here's what I would like to go over, is we're going to talk about how to deal with players complaining about your co-official, which is justified. I think that'd be interesting to get into. Are we having those conversations? I wanted to get into referees worried about the next game, possibly a playoff game, or not getting scratched, doing the right thing versus what's good for yourself. Then I wanted to talk, we did touch on technical fouls or addressing behavior. Is the issue with the referees that are taking care of those, the quick referees? I think we called him Harry the Hothead, was it? Or the ones that are not addressing them? Which one is it? Are we allowing too much bad behavior? And I know Kenny will touch on that because we had some differences on their situation, and Dwayne, 2 of them are in with their game situation they had. And then are we really being good partners or even good crew chiefs on obvious bad calls that seem to happen? Hopefully don't, but they seem to have at least once, if not more, per game. So how are we as crew chiefs on those? Then I do have a clip at the end that we discussed on our last 3-person training, which I think will be good to open up, and we can talk about it from a crew chief perspective. And then I did talk to Brian briefly today, and depending on how things go, then Brian may jump in with some things that he wants to add to the group. Okay. So the first topic is, how do we deal with players complaining about your co-official, but that behavior is justified? For an example, would be that there is a call that they have that they got wrong. Let's just say they got it wrong, and a player comes to you and is upset about that, but there's hold some weight to that. How are we responding to the player, and then thinking as a crew as well? Anybody can jump there. We'll start there and just see how it goes, and then we'll start diving into other topics.
Hey, Mark, this is Dwayne.
How you doing?
So one thing that's always worked for me, right? I mean, if there's a call that's questionable and you see that the player's getting upset, I'm not waiting for them to come trample down one of us. I'm going to them, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of address the matter up front and just let them know, like, look, we may have got it wrong. We're not going to get every single one of them right. And we're just going to keep working, and I just need you to keep playing for me. And that usually it does two things. It gets that player on your side. So now he knows he can address you. But at the same time, it lets him know that, hey, we may have missed it. We're going to own up for it, without having to come get yelled at. You know what I'm saying? Address it before it gets addressed.
Yep, good stuff, Dwayne. Agreed. Anyone want to add to it? Or how they deal with it?
Hey, Mark, this is Trez. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, man.
Okay. A lot of the times, how I address those situations is listening to the player, see what they're actually talking about, instead of being too quick to address everything. I'll just listen, take it in, and say, you know what, hey, when we get a chance, we'll talk about it. And that just kind of gives the kids some satisfaction of that you are listening. It may have been a total blasphemy play. We might have missed something, but you just want to assure them that, hey, we'll discuss it. And like Dwayne said, you're not going to get everything right, but all they really want is your ear.
Thanks, Trez. Like it. Anyone else? Okay, let's get into, are we going to send that player to the calling official? So I like what Dwayne and Trez said. I agree, listening and talking to them. But are we saying you need to go talk to him or her?
I'll take that one.
Yep.
So in my opinion, if it's questionable, then I would say, hey, go see what he saw. He may have had a different angle than you had, so you can have him go address your partner, but just make sure I'll say to them, make sure you do it respectfully, right? And because that's the biggest key. If you approach anyone most times respectfully, they're gonna reciprocate.
Agreed. Anyone want to add to it?
I would probably add to that, just know who your partner is, because some of them may not want to be questioned. You know what I'm saying? So if you know somebody that, what'd you call him? Hothead Fred?
Harry Hothead, I think it was.
You may not want to send that person over there, because no matter what, they might have that ego and say, look, I don't want you questioning me, go away. And you're just adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Dwayne, because I've done this, and I would like for the group to understand if this is something that possibly we can do better, I could do better, is I've told kids, I wouldn't go talk to him, talk to me the rest of the game. I've said, or whoever it is, his or her, in this situation, it's a guy I'm referring to. I would not go over. That's not going to help the situation, right? If I was you, I think I'm the guy you can communicate with tonight. What are your thoughts on that? Again, I'm understanding your audience and your partners as well. But good or bad, stay away from that. It's a tool we can use.
I'm going to ask the question.
Go ahead.
Are we approaching questions as if we're the crew chief on the game?
Absolutely.
Well, I say you absolutely send that player over there to talk to that referee. And if the referee can't talk to him, then you need to have a conversation with that referee. Again, you can't shirk responsibilities. And I mean, it's not easy. You know, it's not all black and white. That's why it's an art form. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that speaks to the leadership piece of it. Because at the end of the day, whoever your assigner is, or whoever the assigner is, you know, eventually the crew chief's going to have a conversation with the assigner as to why, you know, we couldn't effectively communicate. Because see, what happens is that rolls downhill. So if you have to be careful with telling a player, I wouldn't go talk to him or her or him, because they might not talk to you. Because guess what that player is going to do? When they get into a timeout, they're going to go tell the coach, he told me or she told me that we can't talk to that official because they got an attitude. Now you got a whole nother problem. So be careful with that. Be the bridge, be the leader, bridge that conversation together, make them talk to each other. Again, if you're approaching it from the aspect of you're a crew chief, then be the crew chief. That's my take on that.
And I appreciate your honesty. That's good. That's why I asked, because it's something that I don't know if it's right or wrong. Sounds like in your experience that we could handle that differently. Okay, let me add this to Brian. If you know that the tendency of that referee is not going to help the situation, do we just leave the onus up to and you hope your leadership skills come in? I'll give you some context to this. There's experienced referees in our chapter, our association, that do not want to deal with players at all. They just don't want to deal with them. How do we bridge the gap?
Are they on this call? I'm just playing.
No comment. No, I'm just joking.
I don't know if that referee exists.
Kenny, hold on, Kenny. Let me say this. We've got to be adults about this, okay? If I know that my name is Harry Hothead, okay, hopefully I know that my name is Harry Hothead, okay, and you know, and that's okay. But there's a reason why we balance the crews out. But again, me being Harry Hothead, I can't let that affect the game. Because if that player cannot come communicate with me because I'm Harry Hothead, stop laughing, Dwayne, because I'm Harry Hothead, we send the game south. You just made it about yourself. Because that listen, I have had coaches say to me, hey, my player said that you told them don't talk to him. And now all you do is put yourself in a box where if you have a 50-50 call and it goes against that team, it's already been said that you don't like them. So, you know, again, I'm crew chief. I got my crew chief hat on. If you can't talk to your crew, if you don't want to talk to your crew, then when the game comes out, tell them, hey, I don't mind this assignment, but make me the U1 or the U5, because I don't want the responsibility of having to have the conversations with my crew. I'm sorry. I know that's because I know we're skirting around the issue. You got a direct confrontation, full disclosure. I mean, either you in charge or you not. Don't play with it. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I appreciate it. Kenny, you want to add to it?
Yeah, and I just don't know if that referee exists the way it's portrayed. I don't think we have guys that will not talk to players. I think it's the players that are unruly, that are disrespectful. Not the player that comes and say, hey, can you tell me what I did? Now, their answer might be crunchy, right? But they're not going to be, you know, they're not going to give them a T for asking the question respectfully, right? And you're right. I'm not going to, if it's a game where I'm concerned about my partner, I may not send him over, but I just don't know if there's a guy in our chapter that goes, I can't send him, I can never send him over to that guy. I think we can send anyone over to someone if we help them, to bridge that gap, do it respectfully. And you're right, there are guys like I have said to a coach, hey, just be careful. I warn the coach, because if I know the guy's quick, and hey, coach, this guy could, I don't tell him that guy could be a little quick, but I said, hey, you just be careful, right? To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So I think we can communicate that without throwing our partner under the bus.
Doc, go ahead.
Well, I agree with everything that Brian said, but and I agree with what Kenny said, but I think we do have referees that referee in a sense where they feel like they will never let anyone know they made a mistake unless it's the referees, maybe after the game or during a timeout. I think, when you ask a question about that, I won't send a referee. I won't send a kid over to another referee if I know the call was missed. I'll just say, we're going to discuss it. And me and him will discuss it, because I don't know what it'll benefit. If you send it over to a referee and it's an obvious missed call, the kid's probably going to get frustrated because everyone in the gym have seen it. But I think we still have a few referees that hate to admit that they make mistakes. And I think if we can get to that point where, hey, I've told coaches, Coach, I missed that, and just move on.
Thanks, Doc. Anyone else? It's interesting because we're kind of bouncing back and forth, and I put myself out there because I think I use that way too much. I really do. Like, I wouldn't talk to him if I was you. Now thinking about it, that's really probably not the best thing to do, after listening to Brian and Kenny. So what are better ways? Like Doc said, I'm not sending them over there. Some of them saying, yes, I am sending them over. We're not consistent right now. So as an association, as crew chiefs, we're not consistent. So this is a good topic. Where can we find some consistency on this? I understand the call and the context is different. Like the Doc's point, if it's super obvious and they got the play 100% wrong, and then you send the kid over there, the kid comes back and says, man, your referee said he got it right. Then our credibility kind of goes to the floor. So I don't know, where are we at on this? Come on, someone help me see what we can do to close this gap in this group.
So I think there's two places, right? I think one, we can do it in our meetings, because we have to have, like I think Brian said it, we got to have start to have that conversation, and it's got to be before the ball game, right? That, what's tolerant. We talk about in pregame, what is your level of tolerance? Like someone will say, hey, don't answer my calls for me. Let me answer for my calls. I mean, that's a consistent thing that we talk about in pregame. And I just think if we do it in meetings, and then we talk about in pregame, hey, how are we going to communicate with players? And talk about, hey, this is the stuff that we've been talking about in crew chiefs. Let them know this is what we're talking about in crew chiefs meeting. Hey, I'm not going to answer for you if I think it's something that's questionable. I'm probably with Doc that I'm not going to send them over if I think it's obvious. I'm probably going to, hey, I like that approach. That hey, we'll talk about that, because it really is not going to do any good. Not because the person's unapproachable, but I mean, we missed the call. He's not going to change that call, right? So the two places I think we need to do it better is doing it in our meetings. Talk about. I think this is great that we talk about how do we become consistent, and two, in pregame, we got to make this a part of our pregame in dealing with players, because we are, as a chapter, we're not very good at dealing with players, or we're inconsistent. I shouldn't say we're not good, because for me, I'm more on the side of Bob. I'm like, this is a teaching environment. I'm really trying to teach young men and women how to be better, because they're going to deal with conflict. That all that basketball floor, it's a classroom, and so we're teaching them how to deal with conflict. And sometimes you're going to have a boss that you don't agree with. You just can't get up and quit because you got bills, right? So those are the kind of things that we want to model for them. How do you deal with conflict and still continue to do your job? That's all I have.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think what I've learned, I listened to all the crew chief meeting, and we're talking about culture change and things that we can do different as crew chiefs. I personally believe, my personal opinion, we don't have a ton of time before games. We get too much into mechanical things. We're so talking about PCAs and line of responsibilities. Like, okay, I think we're beyond that. I think the conflict, how we're going to deal with players, how we're going to deal with coaches, style of plays. If a team is 0-3, if it's a new coach, it's those to me, I think more important things to talk about as crew chiefs, because I've been a part of so many pre-games, not as the crew chief. And I'm just sit there and I'm like, okay, when are we going to get to the information that can benefit us tonight? Like you're talking about so general things. We're talking about lines of responsibility. Okay, we're past that. We should know our line of responsibility. We should understand our PCAs, those type things. I think we need as crew chiefs on this meeting is to get into those conversations where one, it includes everybody, and we're talking about the conflict, because we're very inconsistent with how we deal with players, how we deal with coaches, how we talk to co-officials. Because the last 4 meetings, we see it. We're on different scales, but guess what has been great with these meetings is at some point that gap has closed and we've become a lot more consistent within this call. So I agree. We got to get them in the meetings hands. We've got to do that. And this group, I'm telling you, every time I listen to these meetings, we're going to change the culture. We really are. I truly believe that. Bill, go ahead. I know you raised your hand. And then we're going to dive into, because we're there, is how are we having these conversations with co-officials. Okay, so go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, for all the time that we've just spent on this very important point, nobody's mentioned the word captain of the team. One of the things that I believe has helped me during the years is that I will say to the captains as we meet, okay, particularly if I know it's going to be a nail-biting game, Captain, we're going to work together tonight. If you have a question, you come to me or the officials, okay? But we're going to come to you to try and keep the game moving in the right direction. If we give you a hint, like you may want to take a look at number 12, please. Calm him down, right? I think that's the role of a captain to get to that player. If I've got Johnny substitute that just come on the floor and it just happens to be a very difficult call, right? Am I going to say to Johnny substitute, all the things that we have discussed right now, right? It may be as simple as, say, if he's there, saying, gosh, that was a tough one. We'll talk to him. We'll talk about it with the officials at the next opportunity. You're not going to change it. So, I believe in the use of captains. And if a captain is not acting, in a respectful way, okay, for better or for worse, I will go to maybe next up, the assistant coach or the head coach, and just say, hey, I need some more help from your captain. We're trying to keep everybody in a fair environment, a safe environment out here, right? And coach, we mentioned to him about number 12. And then, so the coach learns something about his player, or it reinforces something they already knew about his player, that he chose a bad captain. It gives us a person to go to rather than give every player on the floor equal status as that captain. Why have a captain on the floor? It's the same as why have a crew chief on the floor? They got responsibilities, or they're supposed to. And it's not just supposed to be a title that gets you a date with the prettiest cheerleader out there. Right?
Hey,
Captain's got responsibilities. And
hey,
if
Bill,
there's an opportunity to use them, I think it has to be used.
Hey, Bill, this is Brian. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Suppose the captain's not on the floor. Suppose the captain's fouled out. Then what?
All right. One of the things that I tell them in the captain, particularly if there's only one captain that comes out there, I say, gentlemen, and let's say there's 2 teams that have 1 captain each. Gentlemen, if you're off the floor, I would ask that you let one of our officials know who the temporary captain is until you get back onto the floor. That's called chain of responsibility.
I have a different opinion on captains. I'm going to throw this out there, and I may be way off, is I'll know based on experience who can help the situation. Now, sometimes a captain is a captain based because he's a senior, or she's a senior based on that he or she's been there for 4 years.
I know where you're going. Okay.
Right. So I may be wrong. I have no problem. I'm just throwing myself out there. I know if I'm going into a game, I have a history. I know the 2 players from each team that can help situations. It's not necessarily the best player, not necessarily the captain. It's someone that respects referees. That's what it is. I'm going to go to that kid that respects what we do. And to me, that's more important than the captain. My personal opinion. I may be off on that, but anybody want to touch on it?
But he may not be respected by the players on his own team, but he respects officials more, and you notice that as a safety valve, right? Which is a little bit different because, hey, you are not, it's me that was fouled, okay? And if you're the substitute coming in or you're the guy that doesn't get the ball all the time, right? But you know Mark and you know Kenny and you know Dwayne on the floor, right? I don't care that you know them. They foul me. Now, if you're a captain and you're a strong captain, and very few teams have strong captains, I would like to see them more. You know, the coaches take more concern with it. But it's a difficult, it's a difficult issue. It's one of the things that, we have to make decisions with. What are we working with that night?
Doc, what you got?
Well, I agree with you, Mark, about that. I don't, I've been around a lot of the captain meetings. I say little as possible because I realize that as you communicate, I can say something to someone and about time it get to the second person, it's a different story. So I don't know if the captains really listen because they're out there to play ball and sometimes they're not concerned about what we say. But I just feel like I would rather go directly to that player because that captain, like you said, is either a senior or the best ball player on the team, may not have too much leadership skills. He's just there because he's a 4-year starter. And when you try to communicate with him to tell someone else, there's many times it never actually happened. Also, I'd like to ask Brian, what do you guys say in y'all NBA, when we get up and y'all the captains come up? How long is that meeting? And what's given to the players?
Well, hold on. Before you said, Brian is no NBA referee. I saw his face. He's a Division I women's referee, but that's still good though. Tell us, Brian, you're not there yet. Sorry, man. But tell us where you're at.
I just referee, man. Look, if I'm refereeing bitty ball, it's the same way, Doc. I keep it real short and I keep it real brief because it goes in one ear and not the other. They're not paying attention. I will address if it's a rivalry game per se. I'll address attitudes. You can kind of get a good vibe when they shake hands. So I kind of feel it out. But I will tell you, if I go past 30 seconds on my captain's meeting, I'm probably 15 seconds too long. Okay, I keep it real short and real brief. I try to give them one or two things in and out. That's it.
One of the things that seems to work for me in some of the captains meetings, and again, I'm with Bill and you as well, Mark. I mean, those guys aren't typically the leaders on the floor, but the one message that seems to get across when I mention to them is, you know your players better than we do. You know your problem kids, right? Take care of them before we have to. Take care of them before they come to us, because that is going to stem a lot of problems. And I've been in games and I've seen that kid walk over, grab that kid and walk him away. So something like that is just putting that leadership level on them without giving them a whole bunch of responsibility. Just go take care of that kid. You know who he is. Get him away from us before we have to take care of it. And it seems to work.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dwayne. We talked about on the previous one I really liked was giving a kid responsibility. They like that. Like if you're giving them a responsibility, hey, I need your help tonight. Can you? Most kids, okay, like they feel like now they're a leader, possibly doing something for you, right? You're giving them a task to do. Most of those kids thrive on those, especially high school kids. They thrive on that type of stuff. One thing I did get before someone jumps in, I've heard it many times in pre-games. I don't know if it down with Corpus with you, Farron, but we use the word, your knuckleheads. I personally want to get away from that. I'm just being honest, all right? Because it can come across. I've heard it. And I was like, oh, man. Dwayne, I get what you're saying. I don't think you use words knuckleheads, but I've heard you say you know your players better than anyone else, like your problem players. I think problem players is okay, but knuckleheads to me comes across a little disrespectful. I'm okay to open it up for the group. It's something real minor I just want to touch on. Because I feel as crew chiefs, if you do hear that and you're not a crew chief or you've allowed someone to step up, be a crew chief, and you hear that, I think we need to say, hey, I understand where you're going with this, but let's try to stay away from that word. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I heard it a lot in this past season. Just something I wanted to touch on real quick. All right, so one last thing and we'll jump on. So I did put on here is, are we having those conversations with those co-officials? So I like where we're going with the conversation. So we're talking about, those obvious calls that we've missed. The player comes to you. Are we then talking about those plays, or how do we go about those plays with your co-official? Someone start me off on that. What you've done on the situations? Because we've done a lot talking with players, we're talking with coaches. Now let's get into how we communicate with co-officials.
Yeah, the one thing that seems to work pretty well is just in passing. Hey, remember that play at 4:30? Let's talk about that one. And then having a discussion on the court and taking their attention away from the game, thinking, what did I do on that play, anything like that. But hey, remember that play at 4:30? Let's talk about that one maybe at halftime or at the end of the game. Let's just have a real quick discussion, and that's going to put something in your head like, okay, 4:30, okay, I got it, and then try to remember something about it. But that way, again, you're not distracting from the game itself.
Go ahead, Frank.
Let me back up. What I was going to say earlier was, I think we as officials, because I think sometimes we give lip service at the pregame, and nobody listens to the pregame. We're all kind of somewhat in agreement. But we always say, hey, you know us, we're approachable. When we say that we're approachable, we're trying to let the captains know that they can come and talk to us. So we have to remember that as individuals. If you blew a call, it. Deep down inside, all the way down to the bottom of your Adidas, you blew a call. And you're going to allow maybe your tolerance may change a little bit, not disrespectful, but you got to be a little bit vulnerable and allow someone to come in and approach you. We as a crew chief may try to avoid somebody going over there because we know how that person is, but as an individual, we know if we missed it, and we got to have a little bit different tolerance level. The other side of that is you got to talk to, and I'm with Dwayne, you got to be careful on distracting the rest of the quarter, the rest of the half by saying, hey, we're going to talk about this or remember this. And depending upon who the official is, they may be so wrapped up in trying to remember what did we not get that they just missed the rest of the quarter. So it's a fine line, and you got to know your co-officials on how to handle that, because everyone, whether it's their experience or their ego, is different.
Anyone else? Okay, so I agree. I've used it many times. I know a lot of referees have said, hey, remember that play at 4:30, right? Now let's get into the conversation. Are we asking, what did you see on that play? Or what how does the dialogue start? Because I've seen both. Like, you flat missed that call. I need you to be better. We can't miss those plays anymore. Or is it, what did you see on that? I've seen both. Some effective more than others. What do we think as a group?
I normally try to start with something that I might have missed. Throw myself out there first before I start to address co-officials and where we could have maybe had a different call or a better position to adjudicate the call right. But normally I'll try to start when we get back to the locker room or whatnot with something that I might have flubbed during the game, or somebody brought to my attention that I might have done or had a question about a call that was made by a co-official. One of the other things that we were talking about, how you were saying you see officials just melt down the rest of the game or whatnot. A lot of times when I get table side, I'll even tell my book, especially at least if it's in the first half, tell the book, can you write down? Because I have that same mindset. I don't want to interrupt an official midway through a quarter, and then they start to put their mindset on, well, dang, what does he want to talk to me about? What did I do wrong? Something like that. So to make sure I don't forget, especially in the first half, I might, if I ever get tableside, put it in the book. So when I go check the book at halftime, I can remember it. It kind of just jogs my memory to talk about it during halftime. During halftime.
Yep. Good. Yeah, I think it comes down to your relationship with the partner, maybe their experience. Like if you're working with a newer referee and they're nervous and they missed the play and you know they did, and then you tell them, hey, remember that play. Well, they may remember that play the entire rest of the half. But if it's someone you've worked with a lot, right, and you have a good experience, like we're going to talk about that play later, something like that. I think it all comes to relationships and context and those type things as well. So I like that, Farron. I like that you don't have to say, remember that play at 4:30. I can throw it in the book and then, talk about it later. Anyone else?
Hey, Mark, if I can say, we've talked about this before about exactly what Farron said about writing plays down. If you're in an NBA game and you're there live, they don't worry about going to a position. They go over to the table. They write things down to discuss at the quarter and at the half. And probably the college officials do also. I think they make notes on their own that they go back and they do. We sometimes, by mechanics, we get wrapped around, are we standing on the correct line? Are we in the correct position each time? And we want to ding somebody. But as you move up, you're making those notes and you're wanting to discuss those. We've talked about that before, about how the NBA officials, not saying adopt that, but that's exactly what they do. They're doing notes on what do I want to see at the film at the quarter or really at the half. They're not looking at film at the quarter. So that's a great point, Farron, of, hey, mark that in the book and I'll get my note on the way out.
Yeah, agreed. Anyone else?
Yeah, anyone that's worked with me, and this is Reggie, I just joined in. Anyone that's worked with me knows that this is one of the things that I use during the game. If you work with me, you know the index finger to the eye, tapping near the eye means that remember that play, we want to discuss it. And also anybody that knows me and works with me always knows that I'm trying to be a good partner. I'm not trying to intimidate anybody. I'm not trying to really question egos or personal judgment or anything else like that. We're going to talk about what's good for the game. No, Dwayne, thank you. But anyway, but I'm trying to get better with the game. So if I feel the crew is off a little bit, and the teams are very competitive, we'll get together in the end of the quarter or timeout and discuss. Hey guys, we need to do better. This team is not this game is not going to get easier. We need to get better. Those are the type of terms that I always use, and those that work with me know that those are the terms that I use. It's always we. It's not you, and it's not me. It's always we. I always try to encourage the crew to get better. And like Farron would do, I would always put myself out there before I put anybody else out there. But these are things that we use, but we have to do it. We can't let anything pass because the game it might hurt the game. So if you're trying to get the game, if you're trying to do good in the game and get the crew better, I don't see a problem with that.
Thanks, Reggie. Anybody else on that topic?
I just got a question. I would just like to hear some of y'all's thoughts on how to effectively communicate those conversations when you do have an official that can be somewhat combative, where it's not always necessarily an official that receives constructive criticism or maybe receives, a different point of view, and they're a great official, but their personality just is not one that is receptive to anything at some point.
Anybody want to take it? I mean, it's a good question, because we all know that everybody in your association, you're going to have some different personalities that you have to take into context, because I believe we can't approach every referee the same on these type of things. You just can't do it. So understanding the relationship, I think, is number one, and then you got to be careful with your words, but not babysit either. Like I had said it earlier, depending on your context. Like if I'm working with most people on here that we have a good relationship, I wouldn't have any problem with one of you telling me, Mark, you got to be better. Like you can't miss that play at lead. You got to be better. I would take that pretty well. But if it's a brand new transfer that came in that doesn't know me and comes at me like that, then I don't know how I would take it in the locker room. So I think it's a good question. If anybody wants to add to it, how you're Doc, I think you're up, you're muted. But I mean, I like the question. I'd like to hear from others how you would handle that.
Mark, I think like going back to what Reggie said, I think sometimes if I'm with an official that might have that problem, when I first start the conversation off, I'm gonna say, I feel we blew that call. Even though I know it's in his primary, but then I'm gonna try to open it up where he can be perceptive. And I just know, like Reggie said, if a callers get blown, the crew blew it. So I kind of started out and then put it in here and find out where is he going to go with that before we get into that dialogue where you're saying, hey, you just blew the call. Just, hey, I feel like we blew that call down on the baseline at 2:53. What did you guys think?
Thanks, Doc. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think in response to Farron and engaging an official that is not really receptive, I wouldn't say combative, because combative means that I triggered something, but not really receptive. One of the tools that I use is I go in, and I know I said I don't normally to go with you or me, but in this particular instance, you're referring to that person. So I would normally go in and I would say, I would try to get that person to start internally thinking. You know what I mean? So I would go in and I would say, you don't think. Those are the three words that I would use. You don't think. To get that person to not really necessarily be competitive, but to initially start thinking about, you don't think he traveled on that play, or you know, something to that effect. So it's not being received as I'm being threatening or anything else like that. I'm just trying to get this guy to think a little bit about the play that he or she had.
Yeah, one of the things that is kind of mentioned at my place where I work or anywhere, whatever, is always come from curious, right? So you're coming from a spot that, like Reggie said, you want to trigger some conversation, but not necessarily be, you know, that blaming person or that saying, hey, I think you got that one wrong. So come from curious and say, hey, we had a lot of reaction on this play from players, coaches, fans. Let's talk about this one. You know, what did you see? Let's talk about it. Did we miss positioning? Did we miss the travel? Let's talk about it. So coming from a perspective of you know, there's something that we missed. We had a lot of reaction. Usually we'll set some proper dialogue.
Agreed. Anyone else? I know others are thinking something different. Come on. Because it's a good conversation. It's a good dialogue, because I don't think we handle this. We talked about how we're not real consistent. We're dealing with players and coaches, but also how we have conversations in the locker room.
Yeah, I'm terrible in locker room conversations. And so, I mean, talking about it in this forum helps me to, like, I know I need to be better at, yeah, I have a low tolerance for not wanting to talk about plays or not addressing each other. And you guys know, I really envy, like, the guys that are like the Houston Crews that I've seen, where they can go at each other. I love, you know, people think debating or arguing is bad. Debating and arguing is not bad unless you come out with nothing, you know, and that you can't disagree and not be disagreeable, right? So I want to get better at saying those things like Farron says. I would love to do that. But so my thought process is, how do I get better? And listening, you know, I'm hearing some things. Some things I'm going, I don't know that about that referee. I'm just hearing it for the first time today. You know, so being good crew chiefs means put yourself out there. You know, and if there's something that you're weak at while we talk about these meetings, then we need to be saying, hey, hey, this is where I'm weak. How do we get better?
Mark, let me say something real quick. I think
Yep.
let me put it on the other side, is put everybody in the position of, I missed a call and I'm the one that had to receive it. How would I want to receive it? And I think there's a lot of people right here in this group and some other folks that are not here that I've seen approach me or approach other officials that I think had it right. And I've seen some that either one, didn't approach it, or two, it was a train wreck. But I think just the easiest one is, what did you see? What did you have? Okay. It may be different than what was called, but I think just approaching it and not leaving it hanging out there. Because again, if I blew a call and it doesn't get talked about at halftime, then that's, when are we going to talk about it? When it's like the elephant in the room. So I think you got to approach it some way, and everybody's a little bit different on conflict resolution or how they approach it. But I think folks that, again, on this group here, a lot of them, they've, hey, Frank, what'd you see? Or I'll come in and say, hey, I think I blew that one. And they'll say, what did you see? Or this and that. Or so I think we also have to do a little self-reflection on how are we going to receive that? And not everybody received, but I think a lot of, like I said, a lot of folks in this group right here, or all of them in this group, have come in and said, and they just look and say, Frank knew he blew that one, but I'm gonna ask him anyhow, what'd you see? So we can move past it, we can improve and get it out of the way, and we're not thinking about it the second half. Or
I agree. What about this? I want to add this to it. Being a crew chief, do we have to control every conversation in the locker room? That's the question I want to go with. And the reason I say that is, I remember a game where we had a rough first half. We're walking, long walk to the locker room. Those are the worst, right? And all you're thinking about is, okay, when we close that door, how is this conversation going to go? Well, we were walking and we got close to the door, and actually it was the U1 that touched me and said, I got this. Okay. And it was probably the best thing I could have done that allowed that referee to take it, because I was not going to go in the direction that official was going to go. What do we think about, I'm not saying, again, every situation is different, but do we feel as crew chiefs that sometimes we don't have to control every conversation that goes on in the locker room, or do we feel like we need to have some control based on whatever? I'll leave that up to the group. Go ahead, Frank, you can start it up.
as the crew chief, we don't have to control the conversation, but we have to make sure there is a conversation. So if the U1 or the U2 touched you on the shoulder and said, I got this, you as the crew chief can make sure that the situation was addressed. Again, you're overall responsible, but you don't have to be leading the charge. You have to make sure the charge happens. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Anyone else?
Mark, I got another way to look at this as a crew chief. As a crew chief, we never want to control a conversation. Okay, that's number one. Conversation doesn't exist with control. Okay, for me as a crew chief, anyone can engage into a conversation or whatnot. But me as a crew chief, my main focus is to make sure that our car, if you want to put it, our car stays in the lane of the game. Okay, so if we're having a conversation as a crew and someone else initiates the conversation, I want to make sure that conversation stays in line that's going to benefit the game. Okay, if it gets out if it gets out of whack or someone gets personal or someone's ego is touched, that's my job in order to bring us back as a crew. That's what a crew chief is to me. But as far as trying to control a conversation, no. And trying to control what our goal is in the game, yes, that's what I want to do as a crew chief.
Thanks, Reggie. Good stuff. Anyone else?
Hey, Mark, this is Ron.
Hey, Ron.
I'm just finishing some Bill Miller chicken here. Pretty good. But what I was going to say is that I think as far as kind of talking through some things, if you're open, I think as a crew chief for information and to get some input from other people, I think that opens the other people you're working with to receive information and maybe not be so standoffish. So I try to remain open when I'm, regardless if I'm a crew chief or not, to what other people are saying and take it into effect. And then I think if you're open to some feedback, then they become open, and then there's a better chemistry between everyone. But as far as controlling the conversation, I don't think there's a need for that. I think if everyone can be open with each other, and as far as some people get down the weeds about did you think that was a travel or something? It really isn't affecting the game. It's kind of a micro part of the game. I really don't get into all that. If they come with me on that, I'll discuss it. But I think as a crew chief, you need to look at the bigger picture. If some chemistry things are going on in the game, or if we're missing something with the player. So I think we got to look at the bigger fires. And, some people want to talk about, did you see, did you take 2 steps or 3 or, on a game. So anyways, I just try to look at the big picture and be open myself. And usually that kind of opens up the other people I'm working with.
Thanks, Ron. Enjoy the rest of your chicken. I appreciate you taking
good.
a break from that wing. But yeah, good stuff though. Thanks, Ron. Anyone else? All right, so we've got 35 minutes. We're gonna stay on time. I'm gonna shut it down at 7:30. For y'all that were on our 3-person training, I had 6 clips, and it was the last clip that caused the uproar, and I knew it would. Probably should have did it first, but it's a good clip. Great conversation, and I went back and listened. But I want us to look at this from a crew chief perspective, and we can look at it at 2 ways. I'm good if you want to be the crew chief as the calling referee, and then we can look at it as a crew chief when you're not the calling referee, and then we can dive into conversations we're having with. Let's do it like this first, because I'm adding too much. Let's say you're the crew chief on the play, and you are the trail referee coming up the floor. We'll just do it like that. I'll just keep it a little simple. So you're coming up the floor, and then you have this big play, and you'll watch the reaction of the calling referee. We talked a lot about the system, how the system failed us on this play as far as mechanically, but then the referee we got to have a whistle on this play for y'all that haven't seen it. But then I want us to see the reaction after, and then the conversations we're having with that calling official, and the conversation you're possibly having with a coach, and possibly the conversation you're having after the game. And I want to hear from a lot of people, because I think we will not be on the same page, which is good. I think we're going to look at this play different, and then we're going to start to close the gap and start to think as crew chiefs and best ways to handle a situation like this. Let's even say this is the last play of the game. This even make it even more exciting. Last play of the game, big play. And I don't mind if we didn't get too much into judgment. It's a tough play. I don't mind getting into that if you want to. I don't really like to talk about judgment, but if you want to get into it, that's fine. But the bigger picture is, let's talk about everything else, that context of the game, what happens after the call. And a lot of you that have seen it, I don't want you to jump on right away. So for y'all that have already seen the play and we discussed it our last Zoom meeting, let's open it up to some other referees, what they're looking at, and then we'll go. And we got 30 minutes, so we got some time to talk about it, and I expect us to spend 30 minutes on this clip, which is fine. And if we don't get where we need to, we can just tax it on to our meeting next week. Okay, here we go. I'll show it twice and then I'll go slow-mo. Hopefully don't glitch too much. I'm gonna do it like this, and just in the chat, just say yes or no if it's bad, because I've been optimizing it. It hasn't been working as well. So let me go with this. See, if it's super blurry, everybody just put a big N on it and I'll optimize it. I'll show you again. So let's say we're trail, we're the crew chief trail. Center has the plays, the last game, you know, right down the stretch of the game. Hopefully y'all can see the calling official. One more time. Okay, too blurry, or was it okay? It was okay? Okay, hopefully everybody ain't got boost. All right, anybody want to take it? I can stop, start, slow-mo, whatever you need me to do. But if it's the first time you're seeing it, I mean, obviously we got a, you know, transition play, big crash in the paint. We know it's lead, okay? Lead don't have a whistle, center comes to get it. We know there's got to be a whistle on that. We won't dive into that. We should all know this as crew chiefs, but look at everything after. I'll call on some folks too. So Kenny, Frank, Reggie can't go. Trez, you see it? Trez, you want to take a stab at it?
Why I can't go? What's up with that?
No, you can, but not right away. You already seen this play. You were there last week. Oh, you'll touch on it, Reggie. I know you will, but you're not going first. I don't know, Trez, can you see it? Is that first time you seeing it, Trez?
Yeah, because I missed the call. So
okay, good.
Let me touch on a couple of things.
Okay.
First of all, I think that the league would have had a better call to get. I mean, and I'm not using judgment. We're not going to say whether it was a block or a charge yet. I think all I'm going to say is I think that if the lead was already in close down a little bit more, he would have saw the play coming in to him. Like, take a look. You see, he's way out there almost by the exit door. I mean, the play is happening in the paint. Myself, I would have probably ran straight to close down during this break. Let the play come to me. And I think the league would have saw a different play than what C actually came up with. The other thing that I didn't see on this play was this could have been one of those double whistle plays. If since the C was so wide out, I think he just didn't want to have to deal with the coaches. I think that Lee knew that the play should have went the other way. That's really all I can say right now, Mark, without offending anyone.
Okay,
Hey,
Trez,
Mark,
on that.
I would love to hear from Aaron eventually.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, Aaron, if you want to go next, but talk on this, Trez, right? I agree. I agree with the, you know, lead needed to work earlier. We talked about that last week. Got to get to run through the baseline, get to close down, get the look, accept the play. I 100% agree with that. Let's look at Trez. Look at the calling official right here. I'm talking about presentation to the table and what he's doing. Look at
Oh, I mean, I see. I didn't catch this because of the jumpiness, but I just saw there's gestures. Us as officials, we never want to give gestures or show like, you know, we're having conversations before we even get to the point where we're reporting it to the table. Another thing that would have kind of been cool was once the lead kind of got all the players gathered, they were ready to go, maybe jog out of there a little bit, get away from the white team's coach, because it looks like the white team's coach is saying some things too, but the call went in his favor. So yeah, I didn't like the gesture that was shown.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Trez. Aaron, if you're available, go for it.
Sorry, I'm driving. I did do illegal activity and saw it, but it was jumpy.
Okay.
But I know, sorry. I did see that the lead didn't run through, and then I looked like the trail had his hands on his hips. Did I see that correctly?
Yep.
But other than that, I really couldn't tell much. Sorry.
Hey, Mark, I'm sorry, Aaron. But let me just kind of add, Mark, another thing in case Aaron didn't see it. I think that the official that reported to the table maybe could have came all the way back and maybe gave the coach an ear. I mean, that instead of using the gestures, did you guys talk about that? Maybe backing it up to the almost to the half court area, and you can just hear the coach. Just listen to him. Because first of all, I think the official knows that maybe it was a 50-50 play or that they got the play wrong. But now you're making that coach. We talk about preventive officiating. I think maybe instead of staying that far away from him, maybe we could have backed up a little bit.
Okay, good. Yeah, good point. I'm not going to tell. We talked about a couple of things that the referee could have done. That was one of them. Like someone did say, hey, I think they need to report and then go have a conversation with the coach at half court. I'm not going to dive into some referees agreed, some didn't, but let's someone else take it. What else can we add to this? And let's just talk about this piece. We've already talked about positioning, all that. Don't want to get too much into the play, but let's discuss ways this referee could do better, and then we can jump into conversations that we may be having. Go ahead, Reggie.
First, this is Sam Houston and Lanier. So I think everybody on this Zoom knows this type of game between these two teams. Okay, so first of all, we as a crew are already going to know that we're in the pregame what we're going to be doing in this game with these two particular teams. Okay, we will be ready for block charge plays. We will also know that if we have a secondary defender, that the lead needs to be prepared to blow the whistle. Okay, those are all the things that's going to be detailed in this pregame. You got a team that drives to the basket, and you got a team that sets block charges. Okay, so we as a crew we would have already been ready for that play, and lead would have been ready for that play. Okay, now getting to these particular officials, like we've discussed about the gestures and all this other stuff. I am in the agreement that a conversation should be expected on this play because it is a 50-50 play. So as soon as we blow the whistle, we know we're going to get reaction from whatever decision that we make, and we need to be ready for whichever coach that decision goes against. So we already should know that there's going to be a question on the call. Okay, when that question occurs, we need to first of all report the foul, and then be ready for a conversation. Now, I'm not one of the guys to try and get to half court, turn my back on the free throw line, and have a conversation with the coach. I'm not giving him that much, and I'm gonna try to be quick here. I'm not going to give him that much attention, okay? But I will let him know that I am ready to listen to him, okay? So I'm going to my spot, maybe a little bit higher at the trail position. I will turn my back to him, but I will let him know that I am ready to listen to you. Okay, I can hear you. Okay, and then whatever he says, we're going to have a conversation, but my conversation won't be face to face. And I will let him know that during the next dead ball or next time out, if we want further discussion, we can have that discussion. but I'm not going to leave my duties or slow the game up so he and I can have a face-to-face conversation. That would be the length that I would go to as far as the calling official on this play.
Okay, appreciate it, Reggie. Anyone else? And I can add some more questions to get people moving, but anyone got anything different?
Hey, Mark, let me add something to that.
Sure.
I think sometimes with the Texas exception of not following the Federation reporting, that bails us out. And one of the things that unfortunately I do incorrectly or correctly, I try to make sure I get to the Federation reporting location. And if you get to that location, like Reggie said, not going to turn your back at midcourt, but you get there, you're much closer to the coach. You report, you hear the coach, you could have that conversation as you turn and you walk back to your position. It just gives them an opportunity. And yes, you may give them a 45-degree shoulder and let them, you hear them or acknowledge them, but doing it from a distance as the screen is frozen here now, just doesn't look good. I just throw that out there that we don't give that coach the opportunity to at least voice it. We don't have to answer everything, but I always try to come out to the middle and like the old school Federation, and that gives me an opportunity to listen to them. They can bark at me. By the time I turn my back, that's kind of my thing. Hey, the discussion is over and we're going to go play basketball.
Also, an add-on, Frank, is when you report the foul, you can of course, again, you got to anticipate that conversation is coming, but you can also minimize the conversation by explaining within the reporting what the defender did. Okay, you can go white 23, block, moving forward, or sliding. You can put that add-on, so now the coach hears you saying why you called the foul that you called, and now he has something to work with.
You know, in talking about the way it's reported, you know, as officials, we're always trying to get respect to the coaches, right? But to be able to get respect to the coaches, we got to show respect. And just that, his mannerisms, he's trying to avoid that confrontation, and he's trying to do it from a long ways away. There is no way that coach is going to respect him, and it's going to, you know, I think this is probably in the fourth quarter, a little bit later on, maybe. Every call he makes from that moving forward is going to be questioned. So, you know, as a crew chief, we would have to address that. But even as an official, we have to understand, you know, how we present ourselves, the nonverbal movements, or in this case, you know, whatever he's trying to get across by his mannerisms or his actions, whatever the case might be. It just sets us up for failure from the start. You know, be confident when he goes to the table, report it. Like Reggie said, if you have to give a little bit more explanation, do it. I'm going to go probably a little bit further, and I'm not going to turn my back on the play, but I might even go down closer to his box. Let him get his say out. If he has a question, I'll respond, you know, at that point, but then we're going to move on, right? But again, going back, we have, in order to get that respect, we have to show that respect, and I just don't think we got it there.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Trez.
Hey, Mark, so Reggie did kind of highlight something that the only thing that I didn't talk about. So Aaron and Reggie had mentioned, well, Reggie mentioned this with Sam Houston and Lanier. And then Aaron said that there was the C official who had his hands on his hip. So when I put that together and I look at this, I kind of want to go back. Did the C official maybe step in there because there was a 2 or 3 players on the floor to make sure that nothing happens, like a push or someone gets up and uses some profanity. I just wanted, can you go back a little bit? I wanted to see where that official was at.
You're talking about the trail.
Like, Yeah, okay, so yeah, he was the trail.
Yeah.
So see how he's just kind of nonchalant, then he
Mhm.
puts his hands on. I would have been down there almost near the free throw area and keeping my eye on those players. That's something that we can learn off of this also. Because these are two teams that's known for rivalry. So that
I
was a good
agree.
point.
Yeah, I agree. But I know why that referee's looking over there. I think I would probably do the same thing based on, oh my God, we got a massive crash. Oh my God, it's against Sam Houston. Oh my God, I need to go look at this coach. So I know what that referee's looking like. Oh my, he's about to come unglued. To your point, Judge, I agree. He definitely should close and help with players, but I understand why the temperature in the room right now is over 100 degrees. But with this call, so that's why I know that referee's looking like, oh my God, this coach is going to come unglued. I'm going to look over there. I know I would do it because I'm like, oh boy, right? I mean, it's just natural for us to do it, even though it's mechanically not very sound. We need to definitely take care of players, but I know why. Great points. I agree with some or not. I mean, I think we're all going to handle it differently. What I think the common theme is, we know it's a big play. Number one, we know it's a big play, and we know there has to be a whistle on it. I just believe as this referee is that when you come and get a play like this at a 50-50, because it is a 50-50, this isn't a straightforward easy blocks, not a straightforward charge. I mean, we've looked at this, we dived into it. It's one of those 50-50s, probably an educated guess coming from the secondary cadence, coming from the secondary coverage on it. And you've got to accept, or I wouldn't say accept, you've got to recognize, okay, this coach is going to be upset. So some referees said that they wouldn't talk to him right away. Some would say, Coach, I'll be over there later. And some have said that they would use their words, to Reggie's point, to trying to help diffuse. Some said they would go to the coach. So we've got some inconsistency there, maybe some context on relationship with the coach. Those type things may play a part in if it's best to get over to them right away to kind of diffuse them. I know Reggie said that doesn't want to give that much attention. I don't know. That's why I kind of put this out here to understand where we are as crew chiefs. What do we feel the best situation is with this? We have some context. We know both the teams. We know it's a heated rivalry. We know the coach is going to be upset. So that's why I wanted to dive into that. I think that it needs to be addressed. I think we can all agree with that we probably need to, like to Reggie's point and everyone else, we hear you, coach. I don't think we can give them like a stop sign. I'm not going to deal with you right now. Or for what this referee did was like, well, your player did this, the gestures, it's just, to Dwayne's point, it's just not very professional. So I agree with that. Now let's get into, if you're the crew chief and you're the referee, hopefully not with your hands on your hips, right? Let's just say that you're the crew chief, the most experienced referee, and this happens. Here comes, are we getting that referee out of there to take care of it? Or are we going to sit back and see how it gets? I'm being real with this because this is what happens, right? We've all been a part of situations where it's like, okay, do I step in? Do I not? What do I do, right? Some want to step in immediately. Some just sit back and be like, I'm going to let that referee handle it. Where are we at? Anybody, talk to me where we're at on that. What would you do if you're the non-calling a referee? You don't have your hands on your hips. Everyone in your group wouldn't do that. And what are we doing with this situation? Anybody, go for it.
Hey, Mark, before we get in that, let me just ask, this picture right here where you have it stopped at is very revealing to me from the outside looking in, because the coach garnered the attention of 2 officials while the 10 players are down there doing something. So I would hope that we come out of this with at least a warning, understanding that the coach who the call went in favor for, if you don't give a warning there, then you're going to have to give the same respect and the same call for the coach when the coach goes off about another call on the other end. You understand what I'm saying? So while within everything you're saying, when you say address it, you know, whether you go to half court, you go to mid court, you definitely don't ignore it. That's definitely not one. But I think one of the tools that we have in this scenario where he garnered the attention of 2 officials, that's a warning. Now, if I'm the crew chief and I'm the lead, and that's the calling official right there, when I bounce that ball, I'm going to look and say, you did give him a warning, right? And I'm going to say it loud enough so that the other coach hears it. And if he says no, then hey, make sure you know he's warned going down the other end. If I'm the C official, and I'm going to communicate that, because my whole thing is with this scenario, if you don't give that coach a warning, I think you lose control of the game. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like this is a rivalry game with two very demonstrative type coaches. So you got to keep that in check, coach. It's just a warning. Once again, warnings are free. If I get pulled over by the police and they issue me a warning, I'm happy. Now they can get that. They don't have to pay the ticket. So this is a situation here where we have to manage it as crew chiefs, regardless of where we're at in the call. We got to manage this situation right. If we don't, your game can go all the way to the left. And so this is when you got to have the courage to be like, you know what, I got to say something to him. Or if I'm C, he turns around that trail, coach, that's your warning. I don't care. I'm going to step on top of you. It don't matter. We'll talk about it later. But I'm going to give you an opportunity. But at least, at minimum, you got to come out of this with a warning, because this picture right here is very revealing. You know, we still getting the ball. And if you look, I'm not quite sure that the lead is not looking down there either. So just food for thought.
If I can, Mark.
Yep.
Just real quick in response to that. First, when we're referring to Lanier and Sam Houston, I'm referring to the play. I'm referring to the tendencies of the teams on how they play. As far as to the coaches, the coaches are not really the issue as far as a rivalry is concerned. So when Mark refers to the trail having an awareness of the conversations happening between the calling official and the coach that the call is going against, he's just having an awareness of the conversation. It's not that the coach is being irate or demonstrative or anything else of that nature. It's just an awareness. I would be the same way as Mark. If I know there's a 50-50 play, I know there's going to be a reaction conversation with the coach, I'm going to have some awareness of that conversation as a crew chief. I'm going to have an awareness of it. In response to Mark, there's no reason to go get him unless there's an escalation of conversation between the coach or the referee. But the fact that there's a conversation doesn't warrant, for me, I don't see a need for a warning for either one of these coaches. I don't know how anyone else feels, but I have to have, as a crew chief, I have to have an awareness of the conversation.
Thanks, Reggie. Anyone want to touch on that? I mean, I was going to get to it. I'm glad you did. I was going to ask, okay, who agrees with Brian that we need to warn this coach? And we have context, and everybody in this group has had these teams, had these coaches. And then who agrees with Reggie that we just have awareness of the conversation and don't? It's a good conversation. We may be 50-50, and I don't know. What do y'all think?
I have not had these teams or these coaches, but I don't think that having awareness of a situation is one thing, but we should not lose sight of players. And he has lost complete sight of players and is not doing his job. So if he is losing focus of doing his job, then I do agree it should warrant a warning. He is not paying attention to players. He is not getting ready for the next thing, which is going back to play. So, I mean, it's pulling away from his duties.
Anyone else?
Oh, I'm sorry. I hear what Brian is saying. I mean, I know that when I have these teams, that's not, I'm with Reggie, but from an outsider, Brian, that's a good observation. From an insider, I'm probably not going to go there. I'm saving my warning for a bigger play. So I'm trying to save my warning, because I know how big this game is to this to these two schools. And so I may want to save my warning for one that I feel like may really need it.
Do you think your warning would also help in getting him to keep coaching and get the players playing and
Nope,
stop a lot of nonsense?
absolutely not. He's not bad. I mean, he's just irritating. It's not bad. I mean, he doesn't, it's just, it could be frustrating. I shouldn't say irritating. That's a terrible word. Frustrating. But no, I don't think it's going to change. So that's what I'm saying. In this situation, I don't think to me, it doesn't look big enough to put a warning on it. I think we're all just aware. Like we're saying, we know the coaches, we know when we get a big play like that, hey, better take a look and see, what's going on over there. Because it may not even be the coach.
Kenny, you guys don't, and I'm agreeing with you, Kenny, but I'm just throwing this out there. You guys don't think that a conversation with the coach can de-escalate rather
100%.
rather than throwing a warning out there? When you can
I'm going all the way to I'm going to almost to the half court and turning my back. Yeah.
Talk to him at half court.
And half court, and my back is turned to him. You're right, and I'm saying, Coach, I'm listening. That's what I'm saying to the coach. I'm not telling, hey, my back is turned, but I'm listening. Go ahead and matter of fact, he's probably gonna meet me at that half court.
And that big dude's gonna stare down at my little ass and say, and chew on me, and I'm gonna take it, whatever, and let him get his say. As long as it's respectful, we talked about respect, and then we're gonna move on because the game is still playing.
Well, so back to Mark's point, if you're in the trail, the non-calling official who's now the C, if you're on the other side watching this happen and watching your co-official not go have that conversation, are you going to go have that conversation? Are you going to give the warning, or are you just going to stand there and watch?
I'm going to stand there and watch and save it for when I can get over there, or again, if he's too demonstrative, maybe I just think I'm going to let that referee handle that play. I don't need to come in there just yet, in my opinion.
So to my point is, if it's so demonstrative that I'm no longer watching the players, then it's worth a warning. If it's not demonstrative enough that I am no longer, if I'm still able to do my job and watch the players, then we're fine. I can have a conversation with him when I get over there. But if I am no longer watching the players and I'm having to watch him, then a warning is warranted.
Well, guys, I think Brian was just making a suggestion. I mean, I kind of agree with Kenny and the rest of you guys. I think at the collegiate level, that might be something else. But at this level, let's just soak that up and, hey, put it in our pocket. But we kind of know that it shouldn't be a warning. I mean, we kind of know that. Let's just kind of move to the next thing.
I'm on the fence. I'll be honest. I don't think we warn coaches enough. And I'm throwing myself under the bus. I'm not good at using that tool at all. And that may be something that we dive into next crew chief meeting about tools that we can use. I get what Brian's saying is that if it's taking your attention off to the players, then obviously he's maybe, and we can't see the coach. And I actually don't remember if he does come all the way to half court, and I can't remember. But it's good conversation. We got 5 minutes. I want to end on this, and then we'll get rolling next week.
So, Mark, I do have one question, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So, it's probably something for next week, something to ponder on. But if the new trail right here, right, if he's not going to take care of business and that coach is being demonstrative, at what point, being the crew chief, assuming that it's the C over there, do you now step in and say, okay, now my partner's not going to handle, but I am? You know what I'm saying? At what point do we take care of business as opposed to waiting for the calling official to take care of business? So just something to think about.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I think, well, let's open it to the group. We can end on this is, do we allow the calling official to handle their business first? And if they don't, then we need to step in. Or if there's some history that we know, that do we step in quicker, or do we just sit back and not? I mean, let's just end on that real quick. Get some opinions from the group, and then we'll end it there.
And you just hit it, Mark. And if there's a history between the official and the coach, I'm not going to allow that to escalate as a crew chief. If it's a rookie and the rookie is having problems, I'm not going to allow that to escalate. But if there's a conversation occurring between an official and a coach, and there's de-escalation happening, I'm going to sit back and let it happen. But you just gotta have an awareness of your partners and what they're able to handle. I will throw some names out there, but I'm not going to do that. But there are certain officials that I know that I probably need to go ahead and initiate a switch between the trail and the sea. And there's officials that I know that I can leave them alone, and they can handle the situation. You got to know who you're working with on that particular night.
Agreed. I've got a clip. I'm gonna throw myself out next week. I have a clip where I go over there. I feel it's too much, and I was a crew chief in the game, and I go over there, and I've had some mixed feelings, and it just hit my head when we're talking about it. So remind me to use that. That'll be our clip for next week. When's good times to go over there and get them out. And that's some judgment in it as well, but there's also some situations we can dive into. We're at 7:28. We can end early. Anybody want to close on anything, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week at 6 o'clock.
If Reggie tried to get me out of there, I'm gonna send him back.
Oh Lord, here you go.
Stand up, big man.
Yeah, maybe 10 years ago I would have switched. But Reggie,
I'm gonna do you like I did Sal and grab you by the hips and move you.
Hey, I appreciate y'all hopping on. Stay safe out there, man. It's crazy. All right, stay safe out. Be smart with your decisions, and we'll be doing more Zoom meetings now. We're definitely not getting on the court. So, yeah, appreciate you all. And again, it's recorded. I'll email the link to you. I don't put it on Facebook because that can cause some issues, but I'll put it on an email when it's downloaded, and we'll see you guys soon. All right, take care.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.